What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. I hope everyone is keeping wonderfully well. We're continuing on with our season previews, and today I've got Daniel here with me from the Kerry franchise Instagram account. And we're here obviously to preview the Kerry footballers ahead of the upcoming 2021 National League. I suppose, first of all, Daniel, how's life?
Ah, it's it's okay.
It's
Sure,
not
you know
too bad.
yourself, don't you? You know yourself.
Yeah, it's not too bad now, not too bad. Have you gotten over the Cork defeat yet, or is it still in the back of the head? Do you still sleepless nights, all that kind of stuff? Or
I think for the first month or so, people weren't talking about it. Some were, some weren't, but um, it was almost it was traumatic. Because no one expected it. Kind of reminded you of the implosion that happened against Mead in 2001. Um, that was that was slightly different, but on the same sort of level. But it was a very long winter, and I'd say that it feels like it's been an age really since there's been any football to talk about. Especially when you lose and you get knocked out so early, it really feels like a very long time. So I'm sure it feels like a very long time for the people involved in the Kerry setup too.
yeah, like I'd imagine they're itching really to get back because it was like, it was such a strange situation. Like I suppose for a lot of the Kerry lads, like normally you'd have qualifiers and all that, and I think a lot of the lads in the Sunday game were even alluding to it that Kerry were kind of setting up for further down the line if they were going to play a Dublin or a Mayo or something like that, and then in the end they kind of just got caught cold, I suppose, caught with their tail between their legs in many ways.
That was a general consensus at the time, all right, that we were trying to be maybe a little bit too cute and trying to prepare for games that are down the line and not really focusing on the hurdles that are right in front of us, perhaps taking Cork for granted. But I'd say that's only partly true. Um, it's kind of a game that I don't really want to get too much into because you could be stuck talking about it for quite a while. But safe to say, it's pretty much been banished really from memory, and only thing to take from it is if they have learned any lessons going forward. But we won't find that out until they're in action. But I'm sure that they've been working really hard, and I'm sure that they don't want to go through what they went through last season and to be knocked out that early in the championship again. So I'd say that's fuel to the fire.
100%, yeah. Like I'd imagine, because I suppose like at the end of the day in 2019, like we spoke about it last year, and I do feel a bit bad because I feel like I jinxed you in many ways the way we were previewing Kerry ahead of the season a week before. I honestly did feel that they'd win that game.
I think
And
everyone did.
yeah,
Everyone thought that they were going to win that game. And I mean, even though Kerry were poor and the conditions were atrocious, they still only managed to pip us with the last kick of the game.
yeah,
So I suppose maybe that says more about Cork, but than it does about Kerry. But when conditions are that poor, it's really like tactics. A lot of the tactics and things like that tend to go out the window when when the pitch is that wet and the surface is that slippy. You know, so when it gets to that stage, kind of all bets are off, and it comes down to just drive and who wants it more on the day or a small bit of luck. And anyway, sure, they got that last high dropping ball into the
mm,
square. There's anyway, we know what happened. So,
yeah, yeah.
but I didn't see that coming no way. So I think I predicted about 7 points or something like that.
Yeah, I think I was about the same as well, to be honest. But yeah, because I had Luke Connolly even on my podcast not too long ago, and I think he even admitted like he was going for a goal, like he was going for the point, and the ball just dropped in short, and obviously the rest was history. Obviously, what did
And
you
99
make?
times out of 100, Tommy Walsh would have,
Yeah, he would have. Yeah,
between himself and the keeper, someone would have got a hand to it. They would have sent the ball out. But the way it fell and the lights in his eyes and the rain, and I don't know, it was just a combination of things, and it just that was the end result. It was a sad one.
mm. And I suppose winning the league last year was that the. I suppose that was a positive. I suppose I know obviously for because I know for myself as a Dublin fan, like if we won the league and then got knocked out in the opening round of the championship, it's a hard one to kind of because ultimately the All Ireland is the ultimate goal. But I suppose at the same time you do have a lot of young lads in there, so I suppose winning that league, I suppose that's kind of like I suppose the first step towards maybe greater things further down the line.
Yeah, massive. Winning the league, well, no, that was great. Like, I mean, we beat Donegal. I think it was in the last game, and we beat them in Tralee, and things were looking great. And that gives those young players great confidence, gives them some experience of winning something at senior level. And at the end of the day, I know it's all about championship, but I'd like to see more of an emphasis on the league in the future, because I just think that if you're just boiling it down to just the championship, then it's literally just a handful of games in the whole year that people say matter, and they say the rest doesn't. I don't think you have that in any other sport really, where there's only 3, 4, 5 games of the whole year that matter, and they say the rest don't. So the sample of games you have to look at teams and players then becomes very small if the only games that apparently matter are championship games. But the reality is people want to win the Sam Maguire, and they don't dream about winning the league or anything like that. But it's brilliant if it comes along, and I think that you should always do your best to win whatever competition you're in, and the players are always the same. So I thought the league was it was brilliant to win it, and it shouldn't be I think you should celebrate the small victories as well. However small it is, but it's important to celebrate those things. But the pressure's on now for them to try and get something out of this year, and pressure being probably a little bit on Peter Keane as well. In his not his last year, he was appointed for 3 years, and I don't know if he'll be appointed again. He could be, but I wouldn't be one of these people down to blame Peter Keane either, just because of what happened last year. I know that he got a lot of stick about being overly defensive in the way they set up against Cork. Probably not aspiring to move forward and get scores on the board, more content to kind of just shut up shop and kind of keep things defensive minded, back filling the space, no mistakes, nothing fancy, but at the same time the football was a bit dead. But I wouldn't blame Peter Keane for that. I think he's a good manager. He hasn't done the business yet, but he's going to be under a lot of pressure this year to do it. The players themselves are under pressure too. They're under serious pressure to try and make amends for last year, not just for themselves, but for their communities and the people around them. They're probably sick to death of Kerry people coming up to them and giving them stick or whatever it is, But it'd be nice to get some success at senior level for some of those guys, because the amount of players on that team at the moment with All Ireland medals is very small. Probably only about 5 or 6. The rest haven't got a senior medal.
Yeah, I suppose it definitely had it's been 2014 I think since the last All Ireland success. Yeah, I suppose it's one of them, I suppose, in many ways, when you kind of have a big long winter, I suppose, ahead of you, and there's so many games going on, and then I suppose you have Dublin, who are, I suppose, obviously Kerry's biggest rivals, and they go on and win another All Ireland. I suppose I'd imagine it kind of adds pressure in many ways, because a lot of people are looking at teams to beat Dublin, and I think Donegal was one last year, Mayo to a certain extent, but I think a lot of people would have probably maybe had Donegal, Kerry, Tyrone probably is the closest really to beating the Dubs last year and this year, I suppose.
Yeah, and look, someone's going to have to do it, and they're going to have to do it sometime quick too, for the sake of all of us. But we need to perform to a very high level, I think, this year. That Dublin machine it looks like it's unstoppable, but it's not. No team is unstoppable, and it's not outside the realms of possibility for any team to have a bad day. And the championship again this year, it's one mistake and you're out. So that does kind of add a small bit of more an unpredicted value and uncertainty to it at times. But I suppose we're just looking forward to getting a crack off them if we get a chance to get a crack off them.
Yeah, and I suppose because obviously in the championship, the way I think it would pan out would be a Dublin Kerry final, but obviously we did expect that last year, so I suppose we'll kind of see how it goes. Like, what have you made of even some of the, like, obviously a lot of people have kind of, there's been a lot of rumours, I suppose, about unrest in the Kerry camp and everything else. Now I know Paul Gainey's obviously come out recently and kind of said that's not true, and a lot of people have come out and said it's not true as well. But like, what have you made of all that yourself?
Well, the first things, the first thing is it's there's no uh, there's no real rumor mill or anything like that down in Kerry at the moment. Things are kind of a little bit quiet. You wouldn't really hear much about what's going on inside there, and especially with COVID at the moment, there's a lot less interaction going on. There's a lot less club action, and there's just a lot less people hearing what's going on. So sometimes people fill the void with rumors or anything that might sound, salacious or something that might catch a headline. But I'd say, having listened to Paul Gainey, when he was speaking during the week there and off the ball, he addressed everything, and I more or less knew. I think everyone kind of knew that whatever was put out there about it was totally exaggerated, and probably had no truth in it at all. That would really be their style, to do something like that. It was kind of a bit naive of people to think that that was going on. That there was a revolt with himself and David Moore, and it was all nonsense.
Yeah, I suppose it's obviously it's a hard one to know for myself. Like I've no clue whatsoever, but I suppose from an outsider looking in, certainly it reminds me of the obviously all the outrage about Dublin training. Obviously there's nothing for journalists and everything to speak about to discuss. So I think they're trying to find stories, they're trying to find things to talk about, and that's what it kind of reminded me a bit of in that Kerry situation of journalists and people trying to find something to kind of point the finger or point the blame towards someone.
Yeah, it's a national pastime. Canceling people or
Yeah.
whatever, just calling people out, and especially when we're in times like this, I think people are extra bored and they're looking for stuff. The whole Dublin thing was we won't get into that in too much detail either, but I mean it was a little bit of it was blown out of proportion a lot by the newspapers on front page and stuff like that. I mean, I know you're not supposed to be doing it, and but look, there, it's done. It's kind of it's forgotten about now. They paid for it at the time. Um, you know, I think it was just a bit of a, again, looking for headlines and stuff like that in the type of climate that we're in. People are very aggressive these days.
Yeah.
So, Asher, look, at the end, look, they didn't go out, they didn't kill anyone or anything like that. I mean, they shouldn't have done it, but look,
Yeah.
fine, move on. They've taken their slap on the wrist. So that's that.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with you. Like, at the end of the day, rules are there for a reason. They certainly shouldn't have broke them, but I do think at the same time the outrage was probably a little bit over the top. I suppose obviously going into this year's like league and championship, do you imagine there'd be too much changes like within the panel? Do you think there'd be any of obviously there's a couple of players in the under 20s or whatever. Do you think there'd be much changes there, or what do you reckon?
Well, even if just last week, Peter Crowley left, he'll be very sorely missed there. He's kind of this teak tough kind of, I don't want to say old style defender, but he would have more of the characteristics of the old style defenders in that way. Shane Enright before him. Um, then we had Kelly, the sub keeper, and we had Jonathan Lyon as well. A few months back. So we've had a few people leave since then, but there was 5 extra people brought into the panel in January. Um, I suppose centre back. I'm not too sure what they're going to do with that position. Um, you'll have Foley, Morley, O'Sullivan, Paul Murphy, centre back, Gavin White. But the backs really, that area, it's kind of, I don't want to beat it to death, but we still haven't really found that, I don't know, that perfect chemistry mix in the backs that we need to find. Perhaps with Crowley's departure, someone else might be given a go inside there. I don't know. I mean, Sherwood, I genuinely don't know what they're going to do, who they're going to try inside there. There's been, I don't know. I don't want to get into speculation or anything like that, but we'll see. Midfield then, it'll be Moore and Diarmuid O'Connor were midfield for the last 2 games of the year. I don't know. I think there's scope there to start maybe experimenting with maybe different midfield partnerships and trying to switch things up a little bit for the league. And then, the forwards, there's buckets of them there. It's just who they pick and where they put them. And I suppose what style of play they're told to adapt. So the forwards, there's plenty there. Again, I mean, Paul Ganey's back. Well, he should be back in action. You'll have Tony Brosnan there, Darren Moynihan, David Clifford, Sean O'Shea, Stephen O'Brien, Killian Spillane. There's plenty of forwards there. Darren Moynihan, Micheál Burns, even Tommy Walsh. I don't know to what degree he's going to factor in this year. I don't know. He seems like a waste sometimes to be sitting on the bench all the time. But there's going to be loads of there's new players as well that are going to be looking to get some time. So I don't know. Are they doing maximum subs for the league, or what are they doing? Are they going to allow us to? How many subs?
I think they're doing the usual. I think that they done on previous years. I'd imagine. Anyway, they might allow a few extra ones, but I'm not 100%. I don't think there's been too much clarification around that anyway just yet. Anyways, but as far as I'm aware, because I know water breaks are staying in and everything else, so I'd imagine they're probably gonna stick with what they done last year. Anyways.
Yeah, I don't see the point of the water breaks myself. I just think it just stops and starts the game. And if one team is on top or one team is down, you kind of get a chance to regroup then during the water break, and you kind of get a little bit of an advantage of that. If one team is flying with momentum, and all of a sudden there's a water break, the other team can kind of regroup and they kind of stop the momentum. There's too many stops and starts in the game now. The water breaks I don't think they're necessary at all. And the mark is I'd be glad to see the back of it as well. Again, I think that's just killing the game. There's no skill involved in someone taking a pass from 20 yards into the gut and calling a mark. The back is deprived of an opportunity to mark the player, and the player and everyone watching is deprived of an opportunity of watching a forward figure out his way past the defender, use skills, kick it over the bar, or solo past him. It's just when the mark is taken, the whistle is blown, the wind is just knocked out of the game, and it's just a stopping. I just find it. I don't find it very attractive to watch anyway. But that's another discussion. I don't know how much. Is there another 2 years or so on the trial of the mark?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure they could. I'm pretty sure they could pull the plug on that one if they needed to. I don't know. I don't think it's set in stone for it to be 2 years, but I'm sure they could pull the plug. And I'd agree with you as well. I think it's becoming too much like Australian football in many ways, and I think players are being, potentially scouted by this kind of style system. And yeah, with the water breaks, I think in regards to that, I think one of the main reasons why water breaks were brought in was because over in soccer in the Premier League and abroad, they brought in the water break. So I think the GAA were probably thinking, let's bring in the water breaks as well then, because it obviously blends in with health and all that kind of stuff. And 100% right thing to do at the start, but I do think now they probably should just revert back to the previous system anyways.
Yeah, I'd like to see them get rid of it anyway, and the mark, and let's see. I think that would enhance the game, make 100%. It a bit more attractive to watch, and I think it'd make it more attractive, more enjoyable to play as well.
I think so as well, because you even seen that 2019 final, between Dublin and Kerry, could you imagine in that replay, if there was loads of marks and the referee was stop starting every couple of minutes? I mean, sure, it would take the complete excitement and fun out of the game completely.
It does, yeah. So hopefully they'll see the light there and they'll change that sooner rather than later, because the game of football needs it. It needs some sort of an injection of I don't know, excitement, or some changes with the rules to see if we can kind of knock out the I'm not calling it boring, but I mean, there's some games of football there when you're watching them, you're like, this is not a very enthralling sport at the moment, because it's fair enough if you're watching. Even the All Ireland final last year, I was looking forward to it and everything, but obviously that game ended a lot quicker than I expected, with Dublin getting a goal. Was it within 30 seconds or something?
Yeah.
I can't remember, but well, obviously there was no crowds there. But just in general, when you're talking to football people these days, and you're just talking about the sport and stuff, they say, geez, it's sometimes it can be tough to watch. And that's coming from people with the best intentions.
Yeah.
Really interested people. So they definitely need to try something. They definitely need to try something these in the future to see if they can remedy that.
100%, yeah, 100%. I suppose looking at the, just getting back to the league, obviously, like looking at the group you're in, you're obviously alongside Galway, Dublin, and Roscommon. Very tough group for Division 1 South, obviously in the group of four. I mean,
we're just
that'd be
about
tough.
favourites to beat Galway. We're just about favourites to beat Galway, and then we have Dublin in Semple Stadium in Thurles.
That's right, yeah.
And then we have Roscommon last, and if we get on okay in those games, then we've more games, and that's how the league works. So you'd hope that we'll be thereabouts to the end of the league.
100%, yeah. Like, would you?
And you like to see lots of players getting as much of a lot of the new players that are after coming into the panel. Brian Leonard, Eddie Horn, Paul O'Shea, can't remember, Mark Ryan, and the sub-keeper as well. You'd like to see all those guys get as much action as they can. That's why I'd be in favour of maybe making as many subs as possible to allow as many people to get a run as possible during the league.
100%, yeah. And obviously, like, you're going in, like Kerry are going in, obviously, as the, I suppose, defending champions of the league. Like, do you reckon you will win it again? Like, do you think you'll be thereabouts, or do you think maybe the focus will be more on the championship, I suppose?
Yeah, well, the focus is always on the championship.
Yeah.
That's always the way. But any games you're in at that time, that game is really important to win. And look, they won it last year. They'll want to go out and try and repeat that. And but they'll want to one up it and try and wrestle Sam Maguire out of Dublin. That will be the top of their list of priorities. And I'd say that they've probably been working pretty hard over the winter. I'd say that probably drove a lot of them on over the winter, was the thoughts of, I don't want to go through that again, what I went through last year. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure it doesn't happen. They brought in some changes into the management team. They brought in a guy, Falvey from Cork. I have to do some more research on that. But he was involved in like mountaineering and kind of that type of stuff, climbing Everest and all that entails, which is physical and mental fights that people are having with yourself, and how to get yourself going, and frame of mind and attitude and outlook and all this kind of stuff. So it won't be for want of resources and things like that we won't get the job done. And guys are fit. Guys are probably in great shape, actually. So it's just all down to ball work. You'd like to see the forwards not missing as much as we missed last year. Well, especially against Cork, it was quite poor on that occasion. But just fingers crossed that there's going to see some football. Some good football played. You can handle being beat sometimes if you play well, or if it was a good game. It doesn't stick so badly in the craw. But when you have a quite bad performance and the football is poor, you're kind of it does suck the life out of the county.
100%, yeah, I can imagine. So obviously, like, especially after that loss, and I suppose, like, what would you even consider, I suppose, as a success, I suppose, for Kerry this year? Because obviously back in 2019 when you made the final, I don't think there was much pressure really on Kerry back then, essentially going into that final as such, because Dublin were the all-conquering team. They were going for 5 in a row. I think there was a little bit of pressure on Kerry last year, but I think this year, I think the pressure has probably just gone up a notch, especially after that defeat. So what would you consider as a success, I suppose, in the overall season for Kerry? Would it be to win an All Ireland, or do you think even just getting to a final, semi final, or even winning Munster? Like what do you reckon?
No, unfortunately, cliched answer, but it's true. Unless we take Sam Maguire out of Dublin, the year will be looked on much the same way as last year or the year before, and that's the reality. That's the reality of it. It'd be nice if we win the league, but you sacrifice the league to win Sam Maguire, no problem. But that's
Yeah.
the thing. We have to stop Dublin. Someone has to stop them, and I'd much prefer if it was us. That team that played them 2 years ago as well in that All Ireland final. The team now is a small bit different, but you'd think that this team would be a bit more learned at this stage, a bit more experience, and hopefully you'd expect them to be in a much better position to face off against that Dublin team this time around. So, fingers crossed.
100%, yeah, and I suppose you always, like many teams, I suppose in multiple sports, you always kind of have to have that big defeat or that crushing moment to kind of to bounce back from. Like I often think for myself as a Dublin fan, I look back at, the 2009 Kerry loss or 2010 losing to Meath. I feel like that was almost like those defeats kind of almost helped in springboarding Dublin on towards, that 2011 All Ireland win in 2013 and so on. So, like, would you look at that in a similar way with Kerry as well? You think that maybe actually in the long term, that loss, it might actually even help Kerry because, like you said before, a lot of those players would never have experienced things like that before, and now they have. So,
yeah, well, yeah, as you said there, yeah, a lot of those players as well were fairly successful at minor level and things like that. But I suppose it's a totally different beast at senior. So look, they'll want to make their own mark on Kerry football. They won't have been very happy with what's happened over the last 2 years, and they'll try and make amends really for themselves, and really they're doing it for themselves. But the county and the community and all that stuff, people live and breathe the sport in Kerry. At the moment now it's a bit quiet, obviously because of the restrictions and the lack of interaction between clubs. There's not as much football going on, so it's kind of gone a bit quiet at the moment. But it'll pick back up now in the next few weeks with league and people remembering. Oh yeah, there's football. I remember that.
Yeah, no, it is kind of a bit mad, alright. Like, because I know even when it was around October, like it did feel a bit weird when it was coming back, especially around Dublin as well. It was like, oh yeah, football, hurling, those sports, those great sports, like that everyone talks about, that the whole country talks about. But yeah, no, like I'm excited, as much as yourselves anyway, down in Kerry, definitely for the start up of the league and the championship and everything else. But yeah, look, listen, Daniel, I appreciate your time anyway, jumping on to discuss Kerry, obviously ahead of the upcoming league and championship. The Kerry franchise Instagram account, where can people find you?
Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok.
TikTok as well. Perfect. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, cheers anyway, Daniel, for coming on.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks a million.
No bother.